And to discuss Assad's re-emergence on the international stage, I'm joined now from Oxford by Samuel Ramani. He is a researcher at Oxford University and associate fellow at the Rusi security think tank. And in Doha is Fadel Abdul Ghany, the founder of the Syrian Network for Human Rights. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. Arab countries are slowly welcoming Syria's Bashar al-Assad back into the fold, and it seems Syria's return to the Arab League is imminent. So, Fadel, what will this mean for the Arab world, and why have Arab states changed their stance on Syrian regime?
I don't think that there is that much change from Arab world, except some add one more countries, which is Jordanian. I think all remaining are almost with Assad, like Iraq, Lebanon. We know the influence of Iran, Algeria as well. We cannot consider Algeria. Mm-hmm. The only add value is Jordanian and Egypt, or somehow Egypt. We can say they voted for the Assad sake at the UN Human Rights Council, the UAE. The remaining is still the same position against Assad, which is clear: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Morocco. But why this happened? This is the question. I think that because the Biden administration hasn't been tough as the Republican administration before when it's come to Assad. It has allowed the Arab nation to come toward Assad. Mm-hmm. But the Iranian negotiation also have been affecting this, always Iranian keen to support Assad and to include Assad. We know that be revealed after Obama administration left. We all know that Iran include Assad solution in the nuclear weapons.
Yes.
So now this shift, we don't want to exaggerate this movement. Otherwise, we are serving the Assad regime propaganda. I think there is change, but still not that much.
Okay.
I hope that it will not take further for Jordanian to understand that there is no hope from this rooted regime.
So, Samuel, what's the economic and geopolitical rationale for mending ties with Assad, and why have the UAE, Egypt, and Jordan been leading efforts to normalize with the Syrian administration? What's at stake for them?
Well, I think it's simply a very pragmatic calculation. The official policy of the Arab League, much like the policy of the Western countries, is that Assad must go and Assad must leave power. But in practice, Assad controls the vast majority of the country except for Idlib. So it's just a recognition, a cold hard recognition of the geopolitical realities. And there's some different granularities in the policies of these individual countries. Obviously, Jordan is concerned about instability in Syria being caused by an economic collapse leading to an influx of refugees. So it's got that issue to take into account. The UAE is driven perhaps more by a mixture of private business interests and geopolitical concerns, especially the desire to contain Iran and to a much lesser extent contain Turkey in northern Syria. Egypt is driven by its fear that the Syrians' opposition are composed of Islamists who might resemble the Muslim Brotherhood at home. So part of Sisi's authoritarian stability promotion at home revolves around supporting autocracies abroad, one of which is Assad. And these policies are not new.
Yes.
The Jordanian policy has shifted somewhat, but the Emirati policy has been in motion like this since 2016, and Egypt has been moving in this direction since Sisi took over in 2013.
So, Fadel, how could the further reintegration of Syria have on its 10-year-long war? I mean, how could it affect the places like Idlib, where the opposition is still holding out against Assad?
I think that totally affected Assad, also from several angles, but mainly about the presidential election. Let me bring this example. How's Assad committed this election, and he's just controlled portion of Syria. That's so that this we argue that this election is illegitimate. Assad is control about half of Syria, PYD control portion of Syria. Opposition also control this neighborhood. But Assad is still like trying via Russia support to seize all of this territory. And we don't think that there is like any future hope
Yes.
to solve this dilemma unless that like I'm not seeing any political willing toward ending this conflict till now.
So on the other hand, Samuel, Syria rejoins Interpol. What do you make of this decision's timing?
Well, it's interesting timing, obviously, in tandem with Syria's potential return to the Arab League, but I think it reflects more about Interpol than about anything specific about the current geopolitical situation. Interpol has always valued state sovereignty in like its strictest sense to some degree, and that means often working with and collaborating with regimes that are UN recognized but highly authoritarian and prone to abuse human rights. We've seen that throughout the post-Soviet region, for example, in countries like Tajikistan. We've seen Russia manipulate Interpol in a similar way. So it's unclear whether there's pressure from Russia or other authoritarian allies of Assad to make this decision come to be. But I think it's clearly a reversion and a repetition of something we've seen before, where Interpol values UN recognition and sovereignty at the cost of human rights.
And so, Fadel, now that Damascus can directly receive and send messages from other Interpol offices, how will this impact the lives of millions of Syrians?
I think that will do affect the life, but like I always like keen about not to exaggerate that in order to not like fearing and terrifying the Syrian diaspora around the world. And like we advise Syrian not to travel to like countries supported Assad like Lebanon, Algeria, Iran or Russia. That there will be influence for the Interpol. Otherwise, like I think the Interpol decision is really linked to the will of the countries who's like cooperate with this decision or not. By other hand, we condemn the Interpol decision to reconnect with Assad at any level because Assad is still like ruling the same way on 2011. Nothing being changed in this regime. And that's the main point. Why now relinking with Assad while the crimes against humanity is still exist? While almost all security forces, branches, leaders still the same, committed torture, disappearance, all types of violation. This is the main question, actually, also to the Arab League as well, for the Jordanian, for Egypt, because based on the international law, and this is always our argument, reconnecting with Assad, that means total impunity. You are like supporting the continuity of crimes against humanity, and you are erasing all the crimes which is committed by Assad.
So, Samuel, what's your take on that? I mean, does that give Damascus new powers to pursue refugees and dissidents living outside the country? What's at stake for them first? And has this hurt the network's credibility, or it's just sticking to its mandate?
Well, it would certainly lead to the potential repression of dissidents insofar as Western countries or countries where Syrian refugees or Syrian opposition figures are residing might be willing to engage in extradition with the Syrian regime or work with Assad. So if they're living in Turkey or they're living in Western countries, it's less likely. If they happen to have stationed themselves in some of the Arab countries that are supporting the return to the Arab League, like whether it be Jordan or whether it be Lebanon or whether it be Egypt, then those might be at higher risk. So we got to look at it maybe from the geopolitical context as well. With regards to the reputation of Interpol, as I said earlier, Interpol has a long history of prioritizing sovereignty over human rights. This is nothing new to it. It's the latest source of frustration. So it'll harden the opposition from the civil society and the human rights watchers who are critical of it, but it won't really do much to change their conduct in the long term. I think that in the future we might see Interpol do similar things with other military coup regimes in Africa or Myanmar or other countries going forward. So I think that Syria is part of a broader trend of behavior, and any backlash probably won't change Interpol's behavior in the future.
So, Fadel, Turkey hosts about 4 million Syrian refugees. If Syria asks Interpol to investigate possible fugitives, let's say, how will that complicate the matters?
I think that will do complicate the matters very, very much. But like we know that the request from Assad regime is illegitimate due to like it should be based on the jurisdiction. And we know the domination of the security forces branches on the domination. There is no jurisdiction, we can say, authorities in Syria at all. So that should be taken in consideration of any request from Interpol to any other state. I think that's the main important like argument to be made. But and I think that should like enable state to reject the Interpol request.
Okay, all right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight